All right, folks, strap in. We're going deep today. Diving into some pretty powerful literature. Yeah. Excerpts, actually, from The Thorns and the Carnation. That's a novel by Yahya Sinwar. And this is no ordinary book. It's written in Arabic originally, and it tackles some really, really heavy political themes, especially when you consider, right, the setting is the Gaza Strip and the whole Israeli-Palestinian situation.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It's intriguing because we're not just talking fiction. This author, Yahya Sinwar, he's a big deal in Hamas.
Oh, right.
That's the political organization that governs Gaza.
Right. Okay.
And to add another layer, the guy spent a lot of time in prison in Israel, so you can bet that experience seeps into his writing, shapes his perspective.
Yeah, wow, okay. So right off the bat, it's literature, politics, personal history, all tangled up, a lot to unpack there. But for those of us maybe who aren't totally fluent in like Palestinian politics, can you give us the quick rundown? Who are the major players? What are the different perspectives in Palestinian society?
Absolutely. To really grasp what Sinwar is doing in this novel, politically, I mean, you need some context. So within Palestine itself, you've got different factions, right? Each with their own ideology, their approach to the conflict with Israel. Now, Hamas, where Sinwar is a leader, they're known for a more hardline stance, advocating for armed resistance, as you might know.
Right.
Then you have Fatah. They're more moderate, led by Mahmoud Abbas. Historically, they've been more open to negotiating with Israel. But even within these two, you've got further divisions, varying viewpoints. It's not simple.
Not black and white, sounds like.
Not at all. A whole spectrum. And Sinwar's novel seems to reflect that. It's not straight up Hamas propaganda. Instead, he's exploring the debates, the tensions within Palestinian society itself, like arguing with themselves almost.
Wow. Okay, that's super helpful, thanks. Now I'm like itching to get to some of the excerpts. One that jumped out at me was this line: "We may live in a cage, but our minds are free." It's powerful, right? What do you think he's getting at there, especially given how life is in Gaza?
That line, it's like he bottled the whole theme of resistance that runs through the book. Gaza, it's densely populated, under blockade, resources and movement are limited. People call it an open-air prison. But Sinwar is saying even with those constraints, the spirit's unbroken.
Yeah.
Desire for freedom, for self-determination, it persists in their minds, their hearts.
So resilience then, finding strength, even hope in the face of, well, what seems impossible to overcome. But what about the different forms of resistance in the book? Is it all about armed struggle, or are there other ways the characters push back?
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting. He doesn't give you just one type of resistance. He's got it all. Preserving cultural traditions, acts of civil disobedience, peaceful protests. There's even this character who chooses joy in the face of hardship, you know? Like even finding happiness amidst suffering is defiance.
Huh. So not just advocating for one specific path, he's showing the many faces of resistance, like how people cope, fight back in all these different ways. Makes me think about the internal debates you mentioned, the different viewpoints within Palestine itself. Do those play out in the novel too?
Absolutely. You see characters wrestling with the same questions that divide Palestinian society as a whole. Some are all about armed struggle. They think it's the only language the oppressors understand.
Right.
Others believe in diplomacy, peaceful negotiations. And then there are those searching for a third way, maybe. Focus on building from within grassroots movements and empowering their communities.
So he's holding up a mirror to their own internal struggles, not offering easy answers or anything, more like presenting the different sides and letting the reader wrestle with those questions.
Exactly. That's what's so powerful, I think. It's not just a story. It's a platform for dialogue, sparking conversation about the whole Palestinian struggle and how many paths there might be to a just and lasting peace.
This is already a lot, and we've only just started. But before we move on, I got to ask, how does Sinwar, being a high-ranking guy in Hamas, how does he approach the idea of negotiating with Israel in the book? Is that even on the table for him?
It's a key question, and he handles it carefully. He doesn't dismiss negotiations outright. You'll find characters who advocate for that route. They say it's the only way to lasting peace. But there's this deep skepticism, too, you know? Like, they've tried before, and it hasn't delivered.
So, reflecting that disillusionment a lot of Palestinians feel, like they've been let down by the international community, broken promises, a peace process that hasn't really helped them.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's saying, sure, dialogue is good, but they need to see action, commitment, not just empty words.
Real change, not just talk.
Right. So you see cautious optimism, but also this recognition that real peace, it's going to take more than signatures on paper. It needs a shift in power, you know,
Right.
Willingness to address the root of the problem and a real commitment to justice, equality for everyone.
Sounds like he's challenging his readers, maybe even the whole world, to move past easy answers.
For sure, he's not giving those. But he's giving us a framework, right? To understand all those different perspectives, the history, the emotions that fuel this conflict.
It's a lot to think about. And we've covered a lot of ground. Clearly, this novel of Sinwar's, it's a deep look into what it means to be Palestinian, especially in Gaza. What else have you found in these excerpts that sheds light on the political side of things, the ideas he's working with?
One thing that stood out was how he portrays the different Palestinian factions. He's Hamas, right? But he doesn't shy away from showing the infighting, the power struggles. There's a scene where characters are straight up debating. Armed resistance versus peaceful protest. Each side's got strong arguments. It's heated.
Wow. So not a unified front, even in the story. He's showing all those different opinions. Does he get into the specifics of their ideologies, or is it more general?
No, he goes deeper. There's this passage, for example, where a character who's clearly aligned with Fatah's thinking, he's arguing that negotiating with Israel, as tough as it is, it's the most realistic way to get a Palestinian state. He thinks diplomacy, even with the enemy, it's the best shot at a future where Palestinians and Israelis can live together peacefully.
Interesting that he's giving space to that. Even though it might not be exactly what he believes being in Hamas, does he also look at the Hamas side of things, their ideology?
Oh, yeah. There's this really powerful scene, a character who's basically embodying the Hamas viewpoint. He's fiercely defending their right to resist, however they need to, including armed struggle. His argument is that when nothing else works, when you've tried talking for decades and there's no justice, then resistance, any form of it, becomes a moral duty.
It's incredible how he can present these two opposite views, and it feels real nuanced. Not demonizing either side. It's about understanding their history, their pain, what's driving those different beliefs.
That's the heart of it, I think. This isn't just a political lecture, it's a human story. You see these debates playing out, not in some abstract way, but through the characters, their lives. You see what these political choices mean for families, communities, individuals. It gets real.
I'm starting to get how Sinwar is using literature, like as a bridge, to help people understand, challenge what they think they know about being Palestinian. And he's not telling you what to think, he's making you think.
Exactly. He pulls you into this world that the media often gets wrong, oversimplifies. He's giving voice to people who don't usually get heard. And he's doing it through storytelling, which hits you differently than just politics,
Man, this is powerful stuff. And we're only scratching the surface, I can already tell. But before we go too far, let's circle back to the specific political streams. You said he looks at both Fatah and Hamas. Is there anything else in there? Any other political perspectives represented?
He also touches on those who want a one-state solution, where Palestinians and Israelis would live together, one democratic state, equal rights for everyone.
Whoa. So he's really covering the whole spectrum. That's ambitious. How does he handle such a controversial topic?
He's careful. He presents the one-state arguments through characters who truly believe it's the only path to real justice, equality. They say separate states just keeps the power imbalance, the inequality going.
It's fascinating that he gives space to that, even though it's not a mainstream view on either side, really. Shows his commitment to showing the whole picture.
And it's not just about showing different views, it's about how they affect people. He shows how these different ideologies actually play out in people's lives, their struggles, what they sacrifice, their hopes, no matter what their politics are.
This is what I love about this kind of deep dive. It's not just about, theory. It's about the real stories, the experiences, the emotions that are wrapped up in this conflict.
That's where the power of literature is. It can connect people, build empathy, make us think critically about things that get oversimplified.
I'm totally hooked. We've just barely scratched the surface, but I can already feel the weight of this book, the political insights, the human stories. It's a lot.
And we've only just begun. Welcome back to our deep dive into Yahya Sinwar's The Thorns and the Carnation.
Picking up where we left off, right? Exploring all those fascinating political layers Sinwar's got woven into this book.
And what really stuck with me, from the last part was how he manages to give a voice to so many different viewpoints on this whole Israeli-Palestinian thing, even ones that, you wouldn't expect from a Hamas leader.
Yeah, it definitely breaks down those simple narratives you usually get in the news. It's refreshing, honestly, to see that level of, nuance, recognizing the complexity.
And it's not just laying out these different political streams in some dry theoretical way. He does it through the characters, their individual stories, their journeys.
Speaking of characters, one thing I've been wondering about is how women are portrayed in this book, given Hamas's conservative reputation, are they kind of pushed to the side? Or do they have a real active role in the politics of the society Al-Sinwar is depicting?
That's a great question. And I got to say, this is one of the places where Al-Sinwar really flips the script. Women in the Thorns and the Carnation, they're not just sitting on the sidelines. They're right there in the thick of it, fighting for freedom within their families and in the bigger picture, too.
Can you give us some specific examples of how that plays out in the story?
There's this scene, it's pretty intense, where a young woman, she joins a protest march against the expansion of Israeli settlements. And her family, they're totally against it. But she goes anyway, risking her safety, her reputation, everything, to stand up for what she believes in.
Wow, yeah, that's powerful. Sounds like he's pushing back against those traditional roles, showing that women are just as committed to Palestinian liberation as the men.
Exactly. And it's not all about, like, big political actions either. He shows women dealing with the daily life under occupation. The economic hardship, raising kids, keeping their culture alive. They're shown as strong, resilient, figuring things out, even with all those challenges piled on them.
It's cool how he blends those personal struggles into that broader political narrative and kind of humanizes the whole conflict, right? Reminds us that it's not just some abstract political game. It's about real people, real lives being affected every day.
Absolutely. And by letting these women speak, letting their stories be heard, Al-Sinwar is doing something important. The conversation around this conflict, it's often dominated by men. He's showing that women aren't just victims, they're driving change, shaping the story, pushing for a better future.
Yeah, this is really eye-opening stuff. I'm really starting to get how deep Al-Sinwar's political commentary goes. But before we get too far off track, I want to touch on one more thing we mentioned before. That whole one-state solution idea, it's a bit of a minefield, right? I'm curious how he handles it in the novel.
It's definitely one of the most thought-provoking parts of the book. He doesn't shy away from presenting those arguments. Palestinians and Israelis living together as equals in one democratic state.
Pretty bold, considering he's a Hamas leader. Does he actually say he supports that solution, or is it presented as one option among many?
He doesn't come right out and endorse it, but he uses the novel to really explore it. The pros, the cons, what it might look like. He's got characters who are passionate about it, who see it as the only way to achieve true justice, real equality.
Can you give me a sense of how those arguments are presented in the story?
There's this really moving scene. It sticks with you. You've got a Palestinian character and an Israeli character, and they've become friends despite all the conflict. They're talking about their hopes for the future, for their kids to grow up together without fear, without prejudice. They imagine a society where your nationality isn't about your ethnicity or religion, but about shared values, about recognizing your shared humanity.
Man, that's a powerful image. Sounds like he's challenging readers to think outside the box, to see past those existing divisions, those ingrained ideologies.
Exactly. It's not portrayed as some utopia, but as something that could actually happen if there's a fundamental shift in thinking. Letting go of past hurts and building something new based on respect, shared values.
It's pretty amazing how he uses these fictional characters, their personal stories, to grapple with such complex issues. It's way more engaging than just reading some, political analysis,
Oh, absolutely. He's speaking to your heart, not just your head.
Yeah.
He wants you to connect with these characters, to see the world through their eyes, to feel the weight of this conflict, not just think about it.
This whole deep dive, it's really making me rethink what I thought I knew about this conflict. I'm seeing it in a totally different light now, recognizing all the nuances, the complexity, the things you usually miss in the headlines.
That's the magic of literature, right? It can transport you to another world, introduce you to new ways of seeing things, and make you think critically about stuff you might have just ignored before.
I'm ready to keep going, see where Al-Sinwar takes us next. But before we jump into that final part of our deep dive, I want to go back to something you said earlier. The idea that this book is more than just political. It's a human story. Can you unpack that a little more? How does he weave those human elements into the political narrative?
He does it so well. There's this scene, for instance, where a Palestinian family, they're forced to leave their home because of the violence. And you see it all, the kids scared and confused, the parents desperate to keep their family safe, the heartbreak of losing their home, that sense of belonging. It's powerful.
It's those little details, those personal moments that really drive home the cost of this conflict.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the politics, the big picture, but it's important to remember that there are real people hurting behind it all.
And Al-Sinwar, he doesn't let you forget that. He's constantly reminding you this isn't some abstract problem, it's real life for millions of people. You see how the occupation affects everything, their daily routines, their relationships, their hopes, their dreams.
It's like he's using fiction to build empathy, to bridge the gap between different cultures, different perspectives.
Exactly. By showing the human side of the other, the shared experiences, the emotions that connect us all, he's pushing us to get past the prejudice, the fear, to see the conflict with compassion, with understanding.
That's a powerful message, especially these days when everything feels so polarized, so divided.
It really is. It's so easy to just stay in your own bubble, demonize anyone who thinks differently. Al-Sinwar's book, it's a reminder that we're all connected, Yeah. Our fates are tied together.
Well, I'm definitely feeling inspired to keep exploring these themes, see how Al-Sinwar brings it all together in the final part of our deep dive.
I'm excited to continue the journey as well. We still have so much to uncover. Al-Sinwar's vision for the future, his critique of the occupation, his message of hope amidst the struggle. It's all there, waiting to be explored.
Stay with us, folks. We're about to go even deeper into the Thorns and the Carnation. This book has already challenged my assumptions, opened my eyes to new ways of seeing this conflict, and I have a feeling there's a lot more to come. It's the final stretch of our deep dive into The Thorns and the Carnation by Yahya Sinwar.
It has been quite a journey, unpacking all those political threads, all the different voices Al-Sinwar gives space to in this book.
And I gotta say, I'm still impressed by how he manages to weave those political ideas into a story that feels real, human. It's not just some theory, it's people dealing with the consequences.
Yeah, spot on. And for this last part, I think we should really focus on Al-Sinwar's vision of the future. Does he offer any hope after all the hardship, all the struggle he shows us?
That's what I keep coming back to. We've talked about the different ways to fight for liberation, the armed resistance, diplomacy, building things up from the ground level. But does he actually point to any specific solution, a way out of this mess?
I wouldn't say it's about a concrete solution, more like he creates a space for hope, for using your imagination. He doesn't shy away from the brutal reality of occupation, but he also shows how resilient the Palestinians are, how determined they are to hold on to their culture, their identity.
Makes me think of that line. One of the characters says, "They can take our land, our homes, but they can never take our spirit, our hope for a better future."
Yeah, powerful. That's the core of what Al-Sinwar is saying, I think. He recognizes the suffering, the loss, but he emphasizes the human spirit, that refusal to be broken.
So resistance isn't just about fighting back physically, politically. It's also spiritual, cultural.
Exactly. It's holding on to your heritage, your traditions, your stories. That's a way of resisting, too, when they're trying to erase you. And in that, there's hope, the belief that things can get better.
But what does better even look like? Does he give us any hints of a post-conflict reality?
He's not giving us a map exactly, but he plants these seeds throughout the book. Moments of, interfaith dialogue. Palestinians and Israelis connecting, seeing each other as human.
Right, like that scene we talked about, the Palestinian and Israeli characters who dream of their kids growing up together without all the fear, the prejudice. It's a powerful image. Coexistence, reconciliation.
Exactly, and there are others, where they imagine being able to move freely, work, worship without restrictions, where their economy is thriving, their culture is strong.
It's like he wants us, the readers, to use our imagination too, to help create this vision of a better future.
That's the thing about literature, right? It can reach across borders, past all the politics. It can make you feel empathy, understand things in a way you just can't with, a political speech.
So, he might not have the answers, but he's giving us the tools, the hope, the chance for dialogue, to imagine a future where Palestinians and Israelis can actually live in peace.
Well said. He plants the seeds, and it's up to us to make them grow, to see those thorns of conflict transform into, the blooming carnation. Peace, reconciliation.
This deep dive has been, kind of transformative, honestly. We've learned so much about the politics, the people, the hope that runs through Al-Sinwar's book.
The Thorns and the Carnation. It's more than just a window into the Palestinian experience. It's a call to action, to really grapple with what's going on, and to remember, even when things seem impossible, people can still dream of a better world.
And if you've been with us this whole time and you're intrigued, we really encourage you to seek out the book, read it for yourself. It's a powerful story, one that will stay with you.
Absolutely. And until next time, folks, keep those minds open, keep asking questions, and never stop looking for those perspectives that make you see the world in a whole new way.